Greetings, everybody. This is Bill. Welcome to the channel. Today we're talking college football, and we have a very special presentation for you. Our group, the Color and Pageantry, will be presenting in this video our top 25 preseason All-America team and our preseason top 25 as we head into the college football season. Now, before we get started, we got to address the elephant in the room. I know Keith Jackson's got to be spinning in his grave, all the alignment going on. My goodness, we got teams moving all over the place. The Big Ten has expanded. The Pac-12 is gone. Oh, my goodness. This might produce some really good games, but there's a lot of good teams that we're not going to see anymore. And I got news for everybody. If they think all the good teams are going to be in a division and we're going to get rid of all the cellar dwellers, well, some of the good teams in that division are going to become cellar dwellers. So I don't believe this is good. I know a lot of people are very excited. We're going to get some great matchups down the road, but a lot of teams are going to be left out. I like those teams. I like seeing those games. I like those opportunities for those young men. So it's kind of a dark day for me, but we're going to have some great games. 2023 is going to be great. And let's begin our look at 2023 by looking at our preseason All-America team. Now here's a look at our specialists. Now Joshua Carty at Stanford has been tremendous, and Harrison Mevis at Missouri is looking good too. We saw what we saw from Crawshaw down at Florida. That's outstanding. Great return men. Excited to see perhaps if Travis Hunter out of Colorado could get involved in this for Dion. Now our offensive newcomer, Caden Proctor on the offensive line at Alabama, and Peyton Bowen making a lot of people's heads turn over at Oklahoma in the defensive backfield. Now we do invite you to follow us over at the Color and Pageantry on Facebook. We'll be over there putting our top 25 out each week during the season. Now let's get over and look at our offensive preseason All-America team. Now, obviously, there's a ton of great players on this offensive unit, and we do have the Heisman Trophy winner from last year, Caleb Williams at quarterback from Southern Cal. There are a lot of great quarterbacks out there. There's Drake May at North Carolina, Jordan Travis at Florida State, Jaden Daniels at LSU. Just a ton of great players, but we settled in on Williams, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, and we like Michael Penix at Washington. Good grief, that guy can fling it. Now, we got some great running backs, some names you may not be as familiar with there. I mean, Damian Martinez on our second team, he has been running wild at Oregon State. We like the kid from Arkansas, Sanders, and Nicholas Singleton is going to be a superstar there at Penn State. The wide receivers are nothing but outstanding. All first and second team of these. We could go on. This very deep at wide receiver. Marvin Harrison in a class by himself. Now, Xavier Worthy is another guy we like as a wide receiver, and he could catapult Texas to big things this year. Brock Bowers is about the best tight end we have seen in some time, and there's some good ones behind him. We like Mason Taylor at LSU. Texas has a great one themselves. The offensive line, now Penn State has got a very good offensive line. So does Michigan. So does Notre Dame. Kansas State's Cooper Beebe is very good. And Georgia's got great players. Now, we do like a couple of freshmen. There's a kid at LSU we like, and we do like this Kelvin Banks at at Texas. A lot of great players on this offense, and there'll be more that'll emerge. But this is who we're looking at here in the beginning of the season. Now on the defensive side, we noticed that a couple of teams got quite a few players out here. Alabama, very strong. Dallas Turner is fantastic. And in the secondary, Kool-Aid McKinstry, very good. Ohio State has got a couple of players in there. Their linebacker, Eichenberg, is outstanding. And, of course, JT coming off the edge. That guy's really, really good. Illinois got a couple of people in the front of the defense that look really good. Penn State, again, Kalen King in the secondary, outstanding. They've got a nice edge rusher there at Penn State, too. There's players like Cedric Gray from North Carolina. What a wonderful player he is. Over 100 tackles last year. Clemson, pair of linebackers and some defensive. They are very good on defense. We're not quite sure what they're going to be able to do offensively this year, but on defense, the Tigers are going to bite. Now, Michigan's good. There's some great players in here. The best player was Harold Perkins. Did you guys see the devastation that guy brought to opposing offenses last year? He could not be stopped. That's a great player. I hate to say, you don't want to bring up something like this, but he kind of reminds me of Hugh Green, to be honest with you. A former player at Pitt many years ago, played with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That guy was fantastic. Man, we're going to be excited to watch all these players this year. Great defensive players. Going to be a lot of fun. And we'll be watching it all. But these are our picks. Let us know if you've got anybody that we missed that we should have on there. Do drop us some comments and let us know. But this makes up our preseason top 25 All-America team. All right, folks, as we get into our top 25, we are going to start at the 25th position and work our way up. But before we get there, here are a list of teams that we considered that did not make our list. Some of these teams are, last year TCU came from this list to play in the college football playoff. So some of these teams, there's some good teams in here. South Carolina, a lot of people think South Carolina is on the verge of having a top 15 year, and they could be right. Pitt is another team. Their schedule sets up nicely for Pitt. Now, Tulane beat USC in the Cotton Bowl last year, for crying out loud. Now, Mississippi State, they won 9 football games very quietly last year. We're interested to see if they can keep things going after the sad death of the Pirate Mike Leach. But they got a lot of talent there. Maryland and Louisville are kind of similar teams. They're both up and coming. You've got to watch those teams. North Carolina State is a good football team. Minnesota, they've been winning 8 or 9, 10 games every year. They're good. South Alabama's pretty good this year. Baylor's a team that could be really, Dave Aranda can coach defense. He could get his quarterback going. They could make things happen. We're looking at Missouri to have a pretty good year. Eli Drinkwitz, his job might be on the line. There's a lot of talent at Missouri. Kansas, look what they did last year under Lance Leipold. Man, that guy can coach football. I can tell you that. Teams like Auburn, Nebraska, Michigan State, and Oklahoma State. We're looking to see how they perform. Oklahoma State was good last year, lost a lot of people. Nebraska, Auburn trying to get back to where they were. And then Michigan State had a great season 2 years ago, fell off the planet last year. Are they coming back or not? These are teams we looked at to make our top 25. They fell short for some odd reason. We're going to keep our eye on them. See if there's one of these guys that can come out of nowhere and try to get up into that top 10. Maybe even make the playoff like TCU did last year. Who knows? Next up, folks, we're going to take a look at what we call the Super Six. Now, these are 6 teams that we gave heavy consideration toward making the top 25. These fell right on the cusp, but we expect good things from each of these teams. We're going to start off this group with the Duke Blue Devils. Now, Duke was perhaps the most pleasant surprise in the country last season. They went from the cellar to a 9-4 season, a resounding bowl victory over UCF. Now, Duke is a very veteran team coming into 2023. They've got 18 starters back. Quarterback Riley Leonard can flat out play, and he'll be a problem for opposing defenses to contain. All the skill talent returns, so alert the scoreboard operator. Defensively, the front seven's legit. Now, the schedule's tough. A stretch of 3 games, homers with Notre Dame and North Carolina State before a road game at FSU, seemingly is vitally important for the Blue Devils. There are likely 4 or so losses on the schedule, and Duke is not sneaking up on anybody this year, but make no mistake about it, this is a good football team. Duke. Next in this group is TCU. Boy, howdy did the Horned Frogs have a season for the ages last year in reaching the college football playoff championship game. But that beyond dominating loss to Georgia is going to leave a harsh mark. The Frogs, however, this year, they will be inexperienced on offense, but they do welcome some important transfers, most notably Trey Sanders, the running back who comes over from Alabama, and John Paul Richardson, who comes over from Ohio State, to bolster leading returning pass catcher Savion Williams and tight end Jared Wiley. Now, as usual, the Frogs are disruptive defensively. Strong up front, stout at linebacker, and honors candidate players in the secondary. This unit will be the team strength. Now, it's easy early for the Frogs, but the schedule becomes a bear late in the season. So we're looking at TCU being about 8-4 and on the cusp of the top 25. Next in this group is Kentucky. Now, Mark Stoops has significantly elevated the foundation of the Wildcat football program, and he should be applauded for the job he's done. Once again, even as personnel comes and goes, the program itself is strong. Now, on offense this year, 10 starters returned, so the Cats should be potent. Now, Will Levis has gone off to the NFL at quarterback, but Stoops scooped up Devin Leary, a talented signal caller from North Carolina State. Defensive end J.J. Weaver leads the Cats, who have high talent scattered about on defense. So look out. Now, the schedule is not favorable. The back end is really tough. They got a home game with Tennessee, road contest at Stark Vegas, home for Alabama, and then they close on the road at South Carolina and Louisville. Now, Kentucky could win 10 games, but everything would have to go right. As it sits, we're going to see about 4 losses, primarily only due to this schedule. But Stoops and the Cats, they got a good foundation. They're a good football team and a good program. Next up, we have the Arkansas Razorbacks. Now, Arkansas had a great year in 2021, but they fell off a little bit last year. Returning offensive starters are scarce this year for Arkansas, but K.J. Jefferson does return at quarterback to direct the Razorback offense, which should be good. Rocket Sanders, second in this conference in rushing last year, is back and set for a big year. Could be an All-America player, and the offensive line he's going to run behind, very good. On the stop side, 6 starters return, led by linebacker Chris Paul, defensive back Dwight McGlovern, and strong safety Hudson Clark, the team's top returning tackler from a year ago. Now, the schedule could be worse. Only road games at LSU, Ole Miss, and Alabama find the Hogs probable underdogs. Arkansas seems poised to improve. We've got the Hogs hovering around the 9-3 mark. Could be in the top 25. Arkansas. Next on our list, we have the Miami Hurricanes. Now, Miami's been underperforming for a couple of decades now, but last season really hit a low. It was so bad, there were grumblings wondering if newly hired head coach and former Hurricane player Mario Cristobal was the home run hire they think he is. Well, for 2023, we may find out. Miami returns a veteran team on both sides of the ball, so this really needs to be a season of success for Cristobal and the Canes. Now, Tyler Van Dyke was woeful last season, but he was impacted by injuries seemingly throughout, so we expect him to be better. He played pretty well the year before. The offensive line's decent, and the Canes always house great skill players. Now, on defense, Leonard Taylor leads the unit up front. He is a man-child. And most of the unit returns, including touted potential All-America candidate at safety Cameron Kitchens. Now, the Canes' schedule's not that bad either. They're at Florida State, but, it's not that bad. The Canes have 8-4 looking strong. Anything less than that would be a big disappointment for Cristobal and the Canes. Now, last on our list here, those on the cusp of the top 25 is UCLA. Now, the Bruins return a veteran team in 2023 that could surprise those who are not in the know. Now, one area of youth is at quarterback, but the Bruins seem prepared to go with 5-star true freshman Dante Moore. If they don't, they will soon enough. Moore has exceptional tools, not all that dissimilar to those of the departed DTR. Now, transfer receivers Kyle Ford from Southern Cal and Michael Sturdivant from Cal, they arrived to bolster the aerial attack. 9 defensive starters helped the Bruins solidify a defensive unit that, quite frankly, gave up way too many points in 2022. So we don't know if this is a good thing that they're all back or not. They got to be better than they were last year. The front seems talented, and the secondary seems very good. Now, the Bruins could really be a sleeper. The road is not brutal. Only at USC and Oregon State will UCLA potentially be an underdog. There's no Washington. There's no Oregon, and UCLA will be favored in the rest of them. 8-4 at the worst for the Bruins. Could be a top 10 team. No kidding. UCLA, Chip Kelly. Keep an eye on them. Okay, folks, let's move over to the top 25. We're going to start with the 25th ranked team in our preseason top 25. That's the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now, for years, Iowa has fielded an elite defensive unit, but they've been anemic on offense, and last year was that on steroids. Now, quarterback play has been the centerpiece issue, notwithstanding moribund play calling. Now, most thought Iowa would make or be forced to make a change at offensive coordinator, if not the head coaching position, during the offseason. Instead, Iowa brought in a top-notch transfer quarterback in Cade McNamara, who comes over from Michigan. McNamara is a huge upgrade for Iowa, and he could propel the Hawkeyes to the top of the West. Now, the offense returns high level of production. Caleb Johnson could run for 1,000 yards in 23. Nico Rangini, he had 34 catches last year. He's going to lead the receiving corps. And Luke Lachey is next in the long line of excellent tight ends the Hawkeyes employ out there. They also add Eric All, a great Michigan transfer tight end. He's going to be great too. Now, Mason Richmond, he's the leader of the offensive line, a very experienced group. Now, for once, Iowa seems almost potent offensively. Now on the stop side, corner Cooper DeJean, he had 5 interceptions last year. He's a fantastic athlete and a national honors candidate. He leads the defensive unit. Defensive tackle Logan Lee and defensive end Joe Evans are forces up front. And the Hawks welcome Virginia transfer Nick Jackson, an all-ACC player at linebacker. Quentin Schultz is a hard-hitting safety to boot. The schedule for Iowa is not that tough. Now, they do have the cross-state game with Iowa State, but we think they're 4-0 as they head to Penn State, where they will be underdogs. They've got a decent Big Ten schedule. They do see Illinois. That's an upstart team in the West. They've got Michigan State, Purdue. Those are home contests. They got to go to Wisconsin. They got Nebraska at home. So that's a decent schedule. Listen, they're a better football team, and they got a chance to win the West. But we got them at 8-4, ranked 25th. At 24th, we have Kansas State. Now, the Wildcats had a whale of a season in 2022, winning the Big 12 and earning a trip to the Sugar Bowl. There is no doubt that Coach Chris Kleiman is doing an outstanding job, and this program is on good footing and on the upswing. But can they produce back-to-back conference titles? That's going to be quite a challenge. Now, offensively, the offensive line may be among the nation's best. Cooper Beebe's an All-American candidate at center. Harry Panzer at guard. K.T. Levinson are all conference candidates among that unit. They return intact. Will Howard is back at quarterback, and he's among the best in the conference. DJ Giddens seems poised to step in at running back, but we love Florida State transfer Trayshawn Ward. Phillip Brooks is an all-conference candidate at wide receiver, so the offense is ready to go. Half the defense was lost, but good pieces do return. Defensive end Khalid Duke will lead the unit up front. Austin Moore at linebacker. He led the Cats in stops in 2022. He's back, along with Daniel Green, who's a great tackler. Kobe Savage patrols the secondary, which needs to be rebuilt. But the Cats hope North Dakota State transfer Marquise Singh can provide immediate help. Now, the schedule does look difficult. 2 cupcakes precede a dangerous trip to Missouri, who's improved, and a home game against speedy UCF. But after the bye, the road finds Okie State, Texas Tech, and conference favorite Texas and Kansas. Home games have TCU, Houston, Baylor, and Iowa State. So the most challenging games appear out on the road. Therefore, we think K-State falls short of that conference title, but they are a definite bowl team and a very solid program. 23rd, we have Texas A&M. Now, Jimbo Fisher's Texas Aggies were among the nation's biggest disappointments in 2022, and it appears the team is at somewhat of a crossroads heading into 23. Can the Aggies rebound to the top 20? For Fisher's job security, they sure had better. Now, the good news is 20 starters return, so there's experience everywhere. Offense has been the main issue. Connor Waitman is experienced. He threw 8 touchdowns against no interceptions on 132 attempts last year. However, Max Johnson has transferred in from LSU. He could win the job. Now, there's an opening at running back with Armani Daniels, Le'Veon Moss, and Reuben Owens fighting it out. Aeneas Smith has some off-the-field issues, but he is uber talented and a potential star at wide receiver and kick returner for the Aggies. Wideouts Evan Stewart and Noah Thomas are also dangerous. Bryce Foster, Layden Robinson, and Reuben Fothery make up a pretty doggone good offensive line. Now looking over at the defense, McKinley Jackson, he mans the nose up front, and Shamar Turner and Fidel Diggs are stout at the end. Star recruit Walter Nolan, he looks ready for prime time on the line up there. Edgerrin Cooper and Chris Russell are back at linebacker after 66 and 61 stops accordingly last year. Now, nickel Bryce Anderson and safety Jordan Gilbert, they form a strong safety, and that unit is led by Damani Richardson, who was the top tackler a year ago. Now, the schedule, along with most in the rugged SEC, carries a high degree of difficulty. In the non-con, a trip to face the Hurricanes in Miami is on tap for week 2. The slate starts with a home contest with Auburn, a neutral with Arkansas, but home to Alabama and at Tennessee. There could be 2 losses at that point, at least. Now, after the bye, hoping they're home, and they're going to play an improved South Carolina team. They go to Ole Miss, they're home to Mississippi State, and at LSU to close the regular season. My goodness, that's very tough. Now, listen, we think A&M's going to be better in 2023. They're going to look the part, but there appear to be at least 4 losses on this schedule, and that's going to be tough for Fisher. At 22nd, we have Wisconsin. Now, Luke Fickell has arrived from Cincinnati to take over the Badgers program, which in a stunning move let go of Coach Paul Chryst early last fall. Now, Fickell looks the part, and few, if any, are not predicting success. After all, Fickell took over a very good Bearcat team at Cincinnati and took them to the college football playoff. Now, Phil Longo, whose reputation is throwing the football, he's in as the offensive coordinator. Now, that's not Wisconsin. They typically run the ball. Transferring in to play quarterback is Tanner Mordecai, who lit it up at SMU. But this is the Big Ten, and Wisconsin runs the ball. Is that going to change? Well, we highly doubt it. Braylon Allen is one of the nation's best at running back, so we expect that portion of the Wisconsin tradition to continue. In fact, most of the offense is back, including the top 2 rushers and top 3 pass catchers. The offensive line is led by tackle Jack Edwards, and it returns 4 starters. Now, Wisconsin was not great on offense in 2022, 26 points per game, but they'll definitely be better in 2023. Defensively, we're not so sure. The Badgers lost some key pieces. Now, linebacker Mema Nongmeda. Now, that's a tough one to get there, that name. I apologize if I messed that up. He's the top tackler from a year ago. He leads the stop troops. 8 starters are back. CJ Getz is a quality end. Jordan Turner, all-conference candidate at middle linebacker. Hunter Wohler and Camo Latu are a pair of strong safeties. But the famed defensive mind Jim Leonard, a former player and assistant coach at Wisconsin, he's left. We have to think his loss is impactful. Now further, Wisconsin is certainly among the best in the West, but are they ascending or are they treading water? Now since they made the change to get Fickell, we think the brass thought the latter. Now will Fickell hit the ascension hoped for in 1 year? Doubtful. Let's look at the schedule. A trip to Washington State could be troublesome. They lost last year to Washington State, but Wisconsin could and should probably be 4-0 heading into conference play. A mid-season 3-game stretch will speak volumes. Iowa at home, at Illinois, and Ohio State at home. They're also home to Nebraska and at Minnesota to close out the division. Now the schedule has 10-2 staring us in the face, but we don't think Wisconsin is all that good. So we're going to go with 8-4 for the Badgers. 21st position, we have Illinois. Yeah, we're picking Illinois to win the Big Ten West. Can you imagine? Listen now, Brett Bielema has already made drastic improvement at Illinois, and this is no flash in the pan situation. We think Illinois is going to be right back in the West. In fact, we're picking them. At quarterback, Luke Altmaier comes over from Ole Miss, and this kid can play. 3 of the top 4 receivers return, led by Isaiah Williams, who has all conference abilities. Reggie Love is ready to rock at running back. The offensive line is Bielema's specialty, and Isaiah Adams at guard and Justin Pearl at tackle are all conference performers potentially. Now, Illinois is going to smack you in the face defensively, and they're nasty up front. Jerzon Newton, All-America player. Keith Coleman, defensive end. They're very, very good. Gabe Jackas, Tariq Barnes, and Seth Coleman form a fierce linebacking core. Tavion Nicholson leads the secondary, which did lose some quality players. Now listen, if Altmaier can play as we expect him to at quarterback, Illinois could be onto something. Let's look at the schedule. They got a road game against a much improved Kansas in week 2. That's no joke, especially if you're licking your chops for Penn State, which you got coming up. That's a home game. We think they're 2-1 out of this. Illinois got a tough Friday night game with Nebraska, but that's at home. And then they have road games. They have a road game at Maryland, who's better. And that's before Wisconsin comes in. They've got road games at Iowa and Minnesota. They're among the last 4. No Ohio State and Michigan on the schedule, and Penn State and Wisconsin are at home. Only Iowa's a tough road game within the conference. Looking at that, we got Illinois winning the West 9-3. 20th, we have Texas Tech. Hey, we may not use the same criteria. We may not have the same success as tremendous college football analyst Phil Steele, but we find Texas Tech as our surprise team that could challenge the top 10 in 2023. The Red Raiders are stacked this year under Coach Joey McGuire, who's not getting the proper recognition he deserves. He did a fantastic job at Texas Tech last year. Why do we like the Red Raiders? Well, all 11 offensive starters are back. Quarterback Tyler Show is ready to shine after injury-plagued 2022. Folks are sleeping on him if he's healthy. 4 of 5 of the top receivers return from 2022, led by Jaran Bradley. Taj Brooks returns from leading the Red Raiders in carries and yards in 2022. The line returns all, but this area is ready for an upgrade. They will be improved with another year under their belt, but they also welcome center Rusty Stats, who comes over from Western Kentucky. Now, 6 return on the defensive side. Strong up front with everyone back, led by tackle Jalen Hutchings. Josiah Pierce, 40 tackles, is the veteran of the linebacking crew. Free safety Dadrion Taylor Dewerson is the leader of the experienced secondary. NC State transfer Malik Dunlap and Texas transfer Tyler Owen come in to assist an already veteran group. Now, looking at the schedule, the bye does not come until late October, so it's going to be important for Texas Tech to start strong and remain healthy. A home date, week 2, brings in a ranked Oregon team, and a win here could serve some real notice nationally. There are road tilts at West Virginia, BYU, and Baylor, and home games with Houston, Kansas State, all before the break. After the bye, Texas Tech closes on a tough 4-game stretch. They're home to TCU. Remember them from the national title game last year? They're at Kansas, playing much better. Home to UCF and at the conference favorite Texas. Now, the Red Raiders are very potent offensively. They're going to light the scoreboard up. Even so, they do seem sure to be underdogs, only really at Texas, with home games Oregon, Kansas State, and TCU coin flips. So if the Raiders stay healthy, we think a 9-3 season is more than reasonable. And even more wins would not shock us in any way. The Red Raiders, look out. 19th, we have North Carolina. The Tar Heels have been up and down, but they had a decent season last year as freshman quarterback Drake May came out firing. He almost won the Heisman Trophy. Now, he's a sophomore national honors candidate to be sure, and he's got 9 offensive starters back to work with, so the Heels could be potent on offense. All the top rushers are back, but some new aerial targets do need to be identified. Looking at the defense, linebacker Cedric Gray leads the defensive unit. They bring back 8 starters over there, including the top 5 tacklers from 2022. Gray himself had over 100 of them. There are several potential all-conference players scattered throughout this unit, and they're going to be better on defense, I think, than they were a year ago. Now, the schedule's tough. There are 2 games that we think could derail the Heels. The neutral opener against a very dangerous South Carolina team who beat them in a bowl game a couple years ago, and a home game against a very physical Minnesota team. Those are 2 tough football games. Now, if the Heels are 4-0, a road trip to Pitt is going to be big. The rest of the way, Miami and Duke are at home, and road closures over at Clemson and NC State are tough games. But North Carolina's got a chance. But the early and late games are pivotal to their season. But we think 8 wins and a definite bowl game are certainly in the cards for Mac Brown and the Tar Heels and Drake May. Boy, howdy, that guy's good. At 18, we have Ole Miss. Now, this is an intriguing team. Ole Miss is not quite where they aspire to be, but Lane Kiffin has this program stabilized at a high level, and significant steps are consistently being taken to help the Rebels reach new heights. Now, while they're not favored in the rugged SEC West, Ole Miss is a solid top 20 team with an opportunity to make waves. Let's take a look at why. Well, the offense is the game for Kiffin, and 9 starters return. Jackson Dart, he played well in 2022. He's got room for improvement. He's poised to take the next step. Now, we do note that Spencer Sanders, a 4-year starter at Oklahoma State, he's transferred in, and he doesn't even have he's not even for sure going to be the starter. I don't think he will. Now, standout running back Quishon Judkins is an All-America candidate to be sure. This guy ran for over 1,500 yards a year ago in the SEC, so he's prime for prime time. Jordan Watkins and Zachary Franklin give Ole Miss quality aerial targets. Jeremy James and Micah Pettis, they lead the offensive line. Over on the stop side, an experienced under-the-radar group returns. Although the 5 top tacklers from 2022 are gone, the back end has proven players. In the secondary, safeties Aishin Young and Ladarius Tennyson are 2 top returning tacklers. Ashanti Sistrunk is the top returning tackler from his linebacker spot. Defensive end Cedric Johnson and defensive tackle J.J. Pegues are solid up front. Now, several transfers have been brought in to help, including UCF transfer Justin Hodges at Rover and Louisville transfer Monty Montgomery at linebacker. Now, Ole Miss has talent, and they could be a problem. An early game at Tulane. Remember Tulane? They beat USC in the Cotton Bowl last year. That's an interesting ball game. Now, before they get a bye, the SEC slate has games at Alabama, followed by home games with Arkansas and LSU. Oh my goodness. Now, after the bye, LSU plays on the plane at Auburn. They come home for Vanderbilt and Texas A&M, and they close on the road at Georgia and Mississippi State. Now, folks, that's a rough road. Now, Ole Miss seems to be certain dogs in at least 3 games, with another 3 or so being toss-ups. The slate is not friendly to reaching the top of the vaunted SEC West. We think Ole Miss is pretty good, but they ain't that good, so they're going to fall about 18th. 17, we have Oklahoma. Now, it was not a good year for Oklahoma under the first year of Brent Venables' tenure, and the low point was certainly the eye-opening 49-0 loss to Texas at the Texas State Fair. Unacceptable. Now, the Sooners finished 6-7 after playing very well in a narrow loss to Florida State in the Cheez-It Bowl in beautiful downtown Orlando. But there are nervous folks in Sooner Nation. So what do we expect in 2023 from OU? Well, quarterback Dylan Gabriel's back, but 5-star Jackson Arnold is ready and waiting. Many people wish he'd get the job. Now, OU's got running backs, Javonte Barnes leading the way, but those in the know have their eye on Marcus Major. Jalil Farouk and Drake Stoops are top returning receivers. Andrell Anthony also transfers in from Michigan. He's going to be a playmaker. There are no recognized all-conference performers on the offensive line, which is unusual for the Sooners, but we think the line is solid. Now, defensively, there's plenty of talent. At defensive end, Ethan Downs returns after a stellar 2022 stat sheet. He had 9 tackles for loss and 9 quarterback hurries. Good grief. Rondell Bothrod transfers in from Wake Forest. Look for him. Top 2022 tackler Danny Stunsman. He had 126 stops. He's back in the middle. Deshaun McCullough comes over from Indiana to play the weak side. He's a good player. The secondary has a chance to be stout. Strong safety Billy Bowman's an all-conference candidate, and Key Lawrence is very solid. Reggie Pearson is a guy who transfers in from Texas Tech. He looks to grab a safety spot. But folks, keep your eyes peeled for 5-star freshman Peyton Bowen, who has superstar potential in the secondary. We got him as our freshman defensive player of the year, newcomer. Now listen, both Venables and the Sooners need a good start to ease the pressure over there, and the schedule allows such an opportunity. If Oklahoma's not undefeated entering the Red River War, the wins in Norman are going to be stiff. Now, Texas is the conference favorite, so that game will, as always, be a challenge. UCF, West Virginia, and TCU, they close out the season, seemingly after the Sooners have grown. And they're the remaining contests at home. On the road, on the way out, are Kansas, Oklahoma State, Bedlam, the final Bedlam, and Brigham Young. Now, Oklahoma's set for a big year with that schedule. We think 9-3 is like the worst case scenario. And Oklahoma could be a team that surprises to the upside. So watch the Sooners. We don't think they're going to stink this year. That's for sure. At 16, we have Oregon. Now, you had to be impressed with Dan Lanning in Oregon last year. After getting embarrassingly dismantled by Georgia 49-3 in the season opener, they rebounded to finish 10-3 with a Holiday Bowl victory over North Carolina. Now, part of that, how that happened, was the outstanding play of quarterback Bo Nix, who flourished under the direction of offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham. Now, Dilly's off to coach Arizona State, so there's a new offensive coordinator, but Nix is ready for another big year as part of 8 offensive starters that are back. Now, Bucky Irving, he's an all-conference candidate who ran for over 1,000 yards at running back. 3 of the top 4 pass catchers are returning, led by wide receiver Tony Franklin and tight end Terrence Ferguson. Trayshawn Holden transfers in from Alabama to help. 3 of 5 starters are on the offensive line returning, which is set to include Nishad Strather, who transfers in from East Carolina. 8 starters are back on defense, but only 3 of the top 5 tacklers from 2022 are back. Edge Brandon Dorcas leads the Ducks up front. Weak side linebacker Jeffrey Bassa, who was second on the team in tackles in 2022, he's going to man the second level. Alabama transfer Kyrie Jackson's going to jump in at corner, and Evan Williams at safety. Those two guys are going to lead the secondary. Now, there are pieces, and Nix is a great player, but there are also some holes, and we wonder about the loss of Dillingham, who had a very strong long-term relationship with Nix. Now, the Ducks had better have their defensive head straps on really tight because they go to Texas Tech week 2. Oh, that's going to be a great game. Oregon cannot be worse than 4-1 by the bye week after week 5 because it's a rough slate to close. They have road trips to Washington and Utah and home games with Washington State, USC, and Oregon State. It's just tough. We think Oregon's about 8-4. A lot of people have them much higher. We'll see. We got them 8-4. At 15, we have Utah. Now, last year, we projected Utah to reach the college football playoff, but they fumbled their way to a loss in the heat of the swamp at Florida. But they did recover to win the Pac-12 title game, defeating USC for the second time in the year. Now, while 2022 seemed a veteran bunch, so is this squad, with 16 returning starters. Part of the optimism for 2023 centers around the return of quarterback Cameron Rising. Now, he was injured in the Rose Bowl. He might not be ready to go for the opener, and that's a big deal because the Florida Gators visit. Now, Florida's down, but they got talent everywhere but quarterback, so be careful. Now, Jaquindon Jackson steps in at running back, and he's along with Micah Bernard, so there's a great pair there for the Utes. Devon Keeley returns at wideout after 55 catches a year ago. He teams with Money Parker to form a dynamic duo. But speaking of money, that's on tight end Brant Kuthi, who's an All-America candidate. Now, the offensive line is fantastic, as usual, for Utah. Now, the Utes are known for playing some defense. Per Brett Ciancia, his fine work over at Pick 6 Previews, the Utes have had a Pick 6 for 19 consecutive seasons. Can you imagine? My good. Okay, 9 starters are back on this unit. The front 7 is nasty. Defensive tackle Junior Tafuna is a national honors candidate, and N. Val Gillinger tied for the team high in sacks a year ago, with linebacker Kareen Reed, who wreaks havoc from the inside. Now, Cole Bishop is back at safety after leading the Utes in stops in 2022, and corner Travis Broughton looks emerging. Now, again, getting by Florida, especially if Rising is out or limited, is not going to be easy. And then a trip to Baylor could be interesting. We think Baylor's going to be better. Now, hosting UCLA and visiting Oregon State, that closes out a very tough first half slate. Now, they got tough future road games at USC and Washington, and a home game against Oregon. All are considered top 15 teams. That really raises the degree of difficulty of this schedule, and we think that prohibits Utah from winning the Pac-12. We got them 9-3, maybe 8-4. That's a rough schedule. If Rising's out any length of time, that's trouble. 14, we have Oregon State. Yeah, that's right, Oregon State. Always seemingly swimming uphill. Oregon State's a much better football team and program than most people know, and the Beavers continue to do work and improve. We were considering them as a surefire top 15 team as we're heading into the season, but they did lose their top tackler and NFL prospect linebacker Omar Spates in the portal to LSU. Now, Oregon State does return their starting quarterback, but they went in the portal and got Clemson transfer quarterback DJ Uiagalelei, who had 28 starts for the Tiger. He seems a perfect fit for their system. Now, the top 4 rushers return. They're led by Damian Martinez, who ran for over 1,000 yards last year. Anthony Gould leaves a receiving corps. The line is very experienced, led by honors candidate Joshua Gray and Talise Fuaga. Now, even without Spates on defense, the defense is solid. In the back end, the top returning tackler from 2022 in free safety Katan Oladapo, an honors candidate, he returns. He's teaming with nickel Ryan Cooper. They form a great secondary nucleus up there. Now, the front, tackle James Rawls, he had 8.5 tackles for loss last year in the middle. Easton Marcarinas Arnold could really excel at linebacker, and he teams with Illinois transfer C.J. Hart. Oregon State looks like they've got pieces. Now, it would seem a 4-2 start at a minimum is reasonable for the first half of the year, with Oregon State perhaps favored in all except their road game at Utah and a home game with UCLA. Oregon State closes at home against Washington and at Oregon. If Oregon State can continue their ascent, we think 8-4, an 8-4 year. That's in the cards for Oregon State, the Beavers. At 13, we have Tennessee. Now, the Volunteers were on the come, but they had an outstanding season under Josh Heupel as they dumped Alabama en route to an 8-0 start before they fell at Georgia. Now, Tennessee rebounded strong against Missouri, but then they got blindsided and ambushed by South Carolina, getting destroyed 63-38. They also lost their star quarterback in the game. Still, they went on to finish 11-2, beating Clemson in the Orange Bowl. Joe Milton, who transferred over from Michigan, he jumps in at quarterback. He's a very fine player, but only 5 total starters return on offense. They've got a pair of stellar backs, Jalen Wright and Jabari Small, who both return. Brew McCoy, he's going to lead the receiving corps, but Ramel Keaton and Squirrel White both had 30-plus catches last year. The line returns plenty of starts, most notably Connor Mays at center, but noted star talent is missing up front. On the stop side, which returns 7 starters, Omari Thomas anchors the line. The 2 top 22 tacklers return, including standout Aaron Beasley, who has star potential linebacker, and strong safety Jalen McCullough, both of whom all-conference candidates at a minimum. Now, 5 games preceded by, with a neutral opener against lowly Virginia and at rebuilding Florida and home in a revenge game against South Carolina. 3 tough games come next, Texas A&M, at Alabama, and at Kentucky. Now, after UConn, a road trip to Mizzou before a significant home game against Georgia live on CBS comes our way. Now, Tennessee may slip a bit in 2023, but the overall ascension of the program looks real. We think there are about 3 losses on the slate for 2023, but hey, Tennessee is on the rise, and Milton is a key player. He could make some things happen and give them a better year than we anticipate. Watch him. 12, we have Notre Dame. Now, after Brian Kelly's sudden departure to LSU, the Fighting Irish turned to defensive coordinator Marcus Freeman, a bright young coach that peers around the country had destined for a big future. It started out with Notre Dame playing powerful Ohio State, very close, and a loss, looking good, but then a home loss to Marshall stunned the nation. Now, they seemed to seemingly right the ship, which included a win over North Carolina, but then the Irish suffered another devastating home loss to lowly Stanford. But hey, after winning on the road against a solid Syracuse outfit, the Irish came home and blasted 5th-ranked Clemson. So the year was up and down, but it did culminate with a bowl win over South Carolina. Now, the big news for 2023 is the arrival of standout Wake Forest quarterback Sam Hartman in the transfer portal. Now, leading rusher in 2022, Audric Estime, returns, as does top wideout Jaden Thomas. Now, depth is an issue at the skill spots for the Irish. All-America tackle Joe Alt leads the Big Uglies, and they have a very good unit at Notre Dame. The defense could be strong. Talent is scattered about on every level of this unit. And Javante Jean-Baptiste transfers in from Ohio State, and Howard Cross is standout at the nose. Leading tackler J.T. Bertrand is back at middle linebacker, and Rover Jack Kaiser is a tackling machine. Corner Benjamin Morrison, who had 6 pickoffs last year, is a national honors candidate. Now, Notre Dame always plays a challenging schedule. This year is no different. They have 2 late bye weeks after playing in Ireland week 0 against Navy. They travel to NC State week 3. That's a tough game right there. Don't mistake that at all. Then, also after the first bye, it's home to Ohio State, at Duke, and Louisville, and home to USC. Ouch! Now, games at Pitt and home to Clemson precede the next bye. An easier close finds the Irish home to Wake Forest and at Stanford. Surefire dogs at home against Ohio State and toss-ups against Clemson and USC seem to spell doom for any playoff hopes, but winning 10 sure looks like about the top for us. So we're going to go 9-3, maybe 8-4, maybe 10-2, but we're going to stick with 9-3 for the Fighting Irish. But boy, can Hartman play. So with him back there firing, just about anything can happen. 11th, we have Southern Cal. Now, brilliant Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams returns under center for Lincoln Riley, and pieces are in place for USC to once again be among the most potent teams in the nation offensively. Williams had an incredible 42 touchdown to 5 interception ratio last year. There's no reason to think he can't keep up this type of performance. and he should just be fantastic this year. Now, Austin Jones, who was second on the team in rushing yards last year, he's back. But watch incoming transfer Marshawn Lloyd from South Carolina. Taj Washington, Brendan Rice, and Mario Williams form a stellar wide receiver room. Do keep your eye on standout receiver Dorian Stringer, who comes over from Arizona, where he had over 1,000 yards receiving last fall. Now, the offensive line is quite good and has a pair of conference honors candidates, so watch out there. 40 points per game is possible for the Trojans. It's on the defensive side of the ball where USC is in need of improvement, and everybody understands that. Although 9 starters returned, the Trojans didn't stop much of anybody in 2022. Now, a bright spot to build on is safety Caleb Bullock, who's an All-America player. And Oklahoma State transfer Mason Cobb should be all-conference at a minimum at linebacker. Georgia transfer Bear Alexander, he'll dive in at nose tackle. Beyond that, the top 3 tacklers, free safety Max Williams, linebacker Shane Lee, and linebacker Eric Gentry all return. So USC does seem poised to be much improved on the stop side. They're going to need to be. Now, Southern Cal's favored by 2 scores plus all the way to a 6-0 start before they travel to Notre Dame. A home game with Utah will follow, with USC closing with a rough trifecta: Washington, at Oregon, and home for UCLA. 11-1 and a spot in the playoff championship game looks like the ticket here, but although some of that schedule's easy, some of it's difficult. They'll have to stay healthy, and they got to improve on defense. But we like Southern Cal heading into 2023. Okay, folks, we appreciate you sticking with us. We're going to get into the top 10 now. And at 10th, we have the Texas Longhorns. Now, could this be the year Texas lives up to expectations and makes a splash on the national scene? They got a ton of talent, including 16 returning starters, so it well could be. This is good news for Coach Sarkisian because the heat is rising. Now, let's start offensively, where 10 starters are returning. The lone loss was brilliant running back Bijan Robinson, so that's going to sting, even though the Horns have plenty of talent returning at running back. Most expect 5-star incoming freshman C.J. Baxter to win the job. Now at quarterback, Quinn Ewers is back, and when healthy, he played very well. And he almost led the Horns to an upset over Alabama. Now the receiving corps is stacked. They're led there by All-America player Xavier Worthy. Now, wide receiver Jordan Whittington and Georgia transfer Adonai Mitchell are all-conference candidates, and tight end Jatavion Sanders is another All-America candidate. The line is strong, experienced with some young players that got snaps last fall, but tackle Kelvin Banks, who excelled as a freshman last year, he's an All-America player and a top NFL draft pick in the future. Now, we expect Texas to be prolific offensively. Now on the stop side, there's quality experience back. The Horns' top tackler in 2022, Jalen Ford at middle linebacker, he's back. He's going to challenge for national honors. Up front, a slew of transfers are looking for time to help Baron Sorrell. Star backer J.D. Barron, 5th in stops last year, and safety Jaron Thompson, 4th in stops. They both return. Texas got a big transfer from Arkansas in Jalen Catalon. He's going to be an All-America caliber player at safety. Now, looking at the schedule, it is rough. There's a trip to Alabama week 2, but it could be a great opportunity for the Horns. Now, inside the conference, Baylor and TCU are significant road tilts. Kansas, Kansas State, and Texas Tech. We talked about Texas Tech. They're emerging. Those are home games. Now, of course, Oklahoma, who the Horns obliterated last year, is in Dallas again, as usual. Texas has a chance to go undefeated if they can slay Alabama, but we think they fall just short and stumble somewhere within the conference on the way to winning the Big 12. That gets them about 11-2 and a spot in the top 10 for the Horns. 9th, we have Penn State. Now, 2023 might be the season where the Lions roar, and this is a very strong football team that returns 16 starters. It all starts up front for Penn State offensively, where 4 of 5 line starters are back, including All-America tackle Olu Fashanu. Now, sophomore running back Nicholas Singleton is a future Heisman candidate. He's primed to flourish behind this stellar line. The top 2 receivers from 22 are gone, but Dante Cephas transfers in from Kent State. He could be a playmaker. Keandre Lambert-Smith is the top returner from 2022. He had 24 catches, but look for Florida State transfer Malik McClain. He's a tall guy, can catch it in the end zone for touchdowns. Really good player. Now, highly touted 5-star quarterback Drew Aller takes over at quarterback, and there's a ton of optimism. Folks are really thinking he can really push the Lions. Now, 8 starters are back on a very strong defensive unit on the line. Defensive end Adisa Isaac pesters opposing signal callers, and the Lions welcome in Chop Robinson, who comes in from Maryland. Now, we really like this group. The linebacking core's top-notch active linebackers Curtis Jacobs and all-big player Abdul Carter. Bigger things are on the docket for him. All-America corner Kalen King. He had 18 pass breakups a year ago. He joins Johnny Dixon and safeties Jalen Reed and Keaton Ellis to form a secondary among the nation's best. Now, Penn State was 11-2 last year, failing to get by Ohio State and Michigan, and that's the goal in 2023, get by them. The Lions travel to Ohio State in mid-October, and then they host Michigan in November. Folks, this is a very good football team, and if Alar is who many think he is, Penn State could well win the big and then find themselves in the college football playoff. At 8, we have Clemson. Now, the Tigers fell off last season from their perennial playoff perch, and there are some questions as to whether this is a new direction or maybe the Tigers are going to snap back. Now, they made a change at quarterback last year. Now they've got 5-star Cade Klubnik. He's the man. Now, Klubnik displayed athleticism, and he's shown some top-notch ability, but is there a learning curve ahead for the sophomore? Now, Will Shipley is at running back. He's a top-notch player, All-America potentially. There are talented but young skill talent all over the place for Clemson. And the line seems young, not quite up to recent standards, but the coaches are liking what they are seeing. Now, defensively, the Tigers are ferocious. Tyler Davis anchors another strong defensive front, buoyed by linebackers Jeremiah Trotter and Barrett Carter, both potential All-America players. The secondary is veteran and high quality, perhaps led by safety Andrew Mukaba. Now, looking at the schedule, they open at Duke. That could be problematic. Folks, Duke is good, but Clemson's going to get by the Devils. We're pretty sure of it. Now, they got a home game against Florida State early. That sets the ACC stage because although there are tough games for Clemson at Miami and NC State and home against Notre Dame, the Tigers are going to be favored the rest of the way. Now, they're going to be a most interesting team to watch this year to see how they go. We think they're going to go well, too strong defensively not to. We expect them in the ACC championship game, and if they win it, guess what? They're probably going to be in the playoff. Dabo and Clemson. Looking good. 7th, we have Washington. Now, the Huskies got good in a hurry under Coach Kalen DeBoer, and this team, which returns 15 starters, is stacked and our favorite to win the conference title in the Pac-12. It all starts with Michael Penix Jr., who was sensational in 2022. Threw for 31 touchdowns against 8 interceptions while throwing for 4,600 some odd yards. Now, he's locked and loaded for 2023. Cameron Davis, he had 107 carries last year. He's going to assume the duties at running back. But 2 transfers. Dylan Johnson's a great player from Mississippi State. Watch him. And Daniel Nagata from Arizona State. They both joined the team. Now, they have 2. That's right, 2 1,000-yard receivers returning for Penix. Both of them. Rome Adunze, 1,145 yards, and James McMillan, 1,098 yards. They form perhaps the nation's top duo on the outside. Jalen Polk, Giles Johnson, and Jack Westover will figure, and they'd be starters most anywhere else. Troy Fitano leads the offensive line, a usual strength for the Huskies. Defensively, 8 starters are back. All conference performers are housed at each level. End Braylon Trice is an All-America for sure. Alonzo Tupulala is second on the team in stops in 2022. He's back at linebacker. Star corner Jabbar Muhammad's transferring in from Oklahoma State. And strong safety Asa Turner is back to quarterback the secondary. Now, the Huskies have the nation's second longest current winning streak, and they're loaded everywhere. Can they sustain it week in and week out? That's the question we have. We think they can. The Huskies seem 10-2 at absolute worst, but we think maybe 11-1, and they'll be in the Pac-12 championship game. Look out for the Huskies. Michael Penix. In 6th position, we have Alabama. Now, it seems strange to even think about Alabama in the 6th position, but hey, they lost 2 award-winning All-America players to the first top 5 picks of the NFL draft. That's going to hurt anybody. Now, Alabama's a young, extremely talented football team. Now, finding a quarterback to produce anywhere near the level of Bryce Young is going to be quite a challenge. They also lost their offensive coordinator. So Jalen Milroe, who played some last year, has a great opportunity ahead of him. But many are expecting Tyler Buckner to ultimately win the job. It's going to be interesting to see how it comes out. Jace McMillan, he's set to start at running back. Stellar wide receiver. Jermaine Burton and emerging star Ja'Cory Brooks, they're the two pass catchers from a year ago, top ones. They return. They're all conference candidates. They're going to help whoever is the quarterback. The offensive line is solid. Maybe not quite up to the normal Crimson Tide standards, but J.C. Lathan is a preseason All-America player right there, and Tyler Booker, he's looking at all conference honors as well. Now, the defensive unit, always an Alabama strength. They lose the top 5 tacklers from a year ago. That could spell trouble. But nose guard Jaheim Otis, he anchors the front. They just don't have a surefire disruptor up there like we're accustomed to. Now at linebacker, Dallas Turner's an All-America player. Who the defense, they're going to build it upon him now. Middle linebacker Deontay Lawson is the top returning tackler, and Georgia transfer Tresman Marshall joins the room. The secondary is very strong with 2 potential national honors candidate and corner Kool-Aid McKinstry, a great one, and safety Malachi Moore. We do expect Alabama to have inferior quarterback play from a year ago, but it's still going to be better than most. Now the schedule, very favorable for the Tide. When the Tide have been finding trouble recently, they've usually been out on the road. In 2023, we find most of all of the top contests for Alabama are at home. Now that includes highly ranked Texas, who comes to Tuscaloosa in week 2. Now before the late October bye, Bama's going to go to Mississippi State. Now they won 9 games last year. And Texas A&M, who almost beat Alabama. And they host Ole Miss, Arkansas, and Tennessee. Now after the bye, LSU visits ahead of a road game at Kentucky before Auburn visits for the Iron Bowl. Texas, Tennessee, LSU, they're the toughest opponents. They're all in Bryant-Denny in Tuscaloosa. 2 losses seem the absolute worst here. But we actually find Alabama pretty dangerous. Saban's been great when he's been in this position. We got Alabama 11-1. Boy, they could be back in the playoff. Don't be surprised. At 5, we have Ohio State. Now, Ohio State nearly knocked off eventual national champion Georgia in the college football playoff last year. But as we head into 2023, superstar quarterback C.J. Stroud is off to the NFL. Now, Kyle McCord seems slotted to take over, but surely there's going to be a drop-off at the position, right? Now, Ohio State is stacked otherwise. Travion Henderson's a stellar running back, and he's got backup Mayan Williams, who's very high quality. All-America wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. is the top receiver in the country, but the Buckeyes have the nation's best receiving room. That includes Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming, and tight end Cade Stover. Now, the offensive line has room for improvement, but returns 3 starters, led by guard Donovan Jackson. The Bucks should be potent on offense. Defensively, defensive end J.T. Tumaloa and linebacker Tommy Eichenberg, who led the team in stops last year, are both national honors candidates. J.T. was disruptive last year. We had him as our player of the week a bunch of times. Michael Hall's stout up front, and Steel Chambers is the leading 22 tackler who's back at linebacker. The secondary returns intact, with corner Denzel Burke and Lathan Ranson at safety leading the way. Now, schedule-wise, Ohio State travels to Notre Dame and Wisconsin. They host Penn State, and then they travel to Michigan to close. It seems to hinge on the level of quarterback play the Buckeyes get. It's going to be decent, but it needs to be outstanding for the Buckeyes to reach the playoff once again. We got them 10-2, Ohio State. At 4th, we have LSU. Now, consider us surprised at how well things went after Brian Kelly arrived from Notre Dame as head coach. We thought for sure there'd be some culture issues that tame these Tigers, at least for a while. But while there were stumbles, like the late season loss at Texas A&M, there were plenty of bright spots, and this team looks poised to compete for the national championship. 15 overall starters return, along with a few transfers, with top-level talent scattered about. Offensively, the Tigers could be nothing short of potent. Jaden Daniels is back at quarterback after a wonderful season in 2022, and they got a great backup in Garrett Nussmeier, who would start most anywhere else. Josh Williams and Noah Cain are both back at running back. However, Logan Diggs is transferred in from Notre Dame. He's going to figure prominently. At wide receiver, Malik Neighbors is outstanding, a national honors candidate. Kyron Lacey looks like a future star. Tight end Mason Taylor is All-America potential all over the place. He can win games for the Tigers. He was fantastic last year. The offensive line is returning almost intact, led by Will Campbell, who excelled as a true freshman last year. He's set to challenge for All-America honors as only a sophomore. Now, on defense, only 7 starters return, but no worries. This is a ferocious unit, particularly in the front 7. Defensive end Harold Perkins was All-America last year as a freshman. He's our preseason Defensive Player of the Year. He reminds us a bit of Hugh Green. My goodness, that's quite a comparison. I can't believe we're saying that. Now, they're ridiculous up front. They have tackles Mason Smith, Miki Wingo, and Ovi Ohuafu, all of whom are on all-conference candidates at a minimum. Oregon State transfer linebacker Omar Spates is another national honors candidate. Middle linebacker Greg Penn, he's the top returning tackler who returns. He's returning. The secondary is the weakness of the unit, however. Greg Brooks is the top returning player, but Darian Chestnut comes in from Syracuse. He's quite a player. He's going to pay immediate dividends. Now, before we pencil the Tigers in the playoff, we do note the schedule is Murderer's Row. They open in Orlando against Florida State. Then they quickly hit the road to Mississippi State. They won 9 games a year ago. A home game border war with Arkansas precedes tough road games at Ole Miss and Missouri and a home game with Auburn. Now, after their bye, they go on the road to play Alabama to perhaps settle the West. And that's ahead of home games with Florida and the closer with Texas A&M. It would seem 3 losses are about the worst we can envision. A loss to FSU in the opener would not end the world, but the Tigers are favored in all of them, including the FSU game, except at Alabama. We have LSU 11-1. Third, we have Florida State. Now, last year, the Seminoles beat LSU in New Orleans to kick off the 2022 season and opened 4-0 before dropping 3 in a row against ACC contenders before closing strongly, which included a bowl victory over Oklahoma in the Cheez-It Bowl in Orlando. Now, a veteran Florida State team in 2023, led offensively by quarterback Jordan Travis and defensively by rush end Jared Verse, is poised to break out on the national stage. Travis has well over 20 starts under his belt and has risen his game to an All-American level. FSU's got an experienced and improved offensive line, a slew of talented backs led by Trey Benson, and a top receiver room led by All-America candidate Johnny Wilson. And this is a room that now includes Michigan State transfer Keon Coleman and West Virginia transfer Winston Wright. Good grief, the Noles are going to put up points. Now on defense, Fabian Lovett is a force inside, and defensive end Patrick Payton is a future star. Meanwhile, the aforementioned end Jared Verse is a consensus preseason All-America and projected top 10 NFL draft pick. Now the secondary, which welcomes Virginia transfer Fenton Cypress, who is an all-conference player, is quite deep. A lot of talent there. Tatum Bethune and Kalen DeLoach lead the linebacking core. Now, Florida State opens with a top 10 matchup against LSU in Orlando before traveling to Clemson in late September. If FSU's 4-0, look out. Even at 2-2, the Noles could still win the ACC, rematching and beating Clemson. And if 3-1, they could still get a crack at the playoff. If Travis is healthy, this is a very good football team. Looks like a playoff run to us. Second, we have Michigan. The Wolverines, with 15 starters returning, are favorites to repeat as champions of the Big Ten and favorites to get a spot in the playoff. Unlike their conference rivals, Michigan returns their quarterback. J.J. McCarthy threw 22 touchdowns against only 5 interceptions last year. He's going to direct an offense that should be very strong. All-America running back Blake Corum is back, but he is coming off an injury. No worries. Star back Donovan Edwards is also back. Cornelius Johnson, who led Michigan in receiving touchdowns in 2022, is also back and leads a talented receiving corps. The offensive line at Michigan is outstanding. This is not unusual. There are 4 potential all-conference candidates on that line of scrimmage. Defensively, on the line there, Chris Jenkins is a force, and the linebacking corps is outstanding. Junior Colson, Michael Barrett, and Mike Sanristil are stellar. And Nebraska transfer Ernest Hausman could be a factor as well. Rod Moore, Will Johnson, they patrol the secondary. Now, you never know, but Michigan seems poised to skate into November before the challenges of traveling to a very good Penn State team and then hosting the Buckeyes. Michigan is very good, and they will be right there in the playoff hunt. I guess the only question is, if they make the playoff, can they handle the SEC? Our number one team for 2023 as we head into the season is the defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs. Now, times seem different in this era. If you're not good, it's harder to get good. If you are good, it's easier to stay there. Georgia is the two-time defending national champion, and they are very good. Very good. Now, Kirby Smart seeks to have the Dogs at a different level, and you can talk to TCU about that. My goodness. Now, offensively, one area of concern may be at quarterback where Georgia needs to replace Stetson Bennett. Carson Beck is your guy, and we'll see what his level of play is. But from what we hear from folks around the Dog program, look out. This guy, they really like him. Think they haven't seen that kind of play since Matthew Stafford. So we'll see. Now, Georgia has great talent around the quarterback. Running back Kendall Milton, wide receiver Ladd McConkey, and then there's an experienced offensive line led by center Cedric Van Pran, who's All-American. Stars abound at every level of the defense, and that type of returning experience is how titles are earned. Up front, end Mykel Williams is ready to put his immense talent on display. Linebacker Smale Morton, the team's stop leader in 2022, is back. He's complemented by Jamin Dumas Johnson and Tyke Smith. Now, Javen Bullard and super soft Malachi Starks lead a secondary full of honors candidates. Folks, no weakness for opposing offenses to focus on with this Dog defense. To top it all off, the schedule's a cakewalk. Improved South Carolina, they come to Athens. And they're a rival who plays Georgia well in Athens. But seriously, I mean, Georgia's, come on. Maybe LSU or Alabama have something in the SEC championship game. But the Dogs look like they're on autopilot for this college football playoff, where they will try for their third title in a row, which is unprecedented in modern times. For us, Georgia's number one until somebody knocks them off. Odds would seem to favor that's going to happen somewhere along the line here, but we're in a different era. So the Dogs right now, the Bulldogs, the Junkyard Bulldogs of Georgia, number one for 2023. Well, there you have it, folks. Our four playoff teams are LSU, Florida State, Michigan, and Georgia. We have Georgia as our number one team in the country. The two-time defending champion Bulldogs are number one until somebody says otherwise with a victory over them. So it's going to be an exciting season. We're really looking forward to it. We really want to thank you for taking time out with us today, out of your schedule to listen to our presentation here of our top 25 and All-America team. Really appreciate it. We will have a top 25 each week if you want to follow along and see what we're thinking. Do drop us some comments on your top 25. Love to hear about it. What did we get something wrong? Somebody should be in there that we got in there that we don't have in there, or somebody that we do have in there needs to be out of there in your opinion. We'd love to hear from you. Drop us some comments and let us know. Hey, folks, it kicks off this week, Thursday night. Two big ones Thursday night, Nebraska at Minnesota and Florida at Utah. And then it culminates Clemson Duke Monday night, and the big one, Florida State LSU from Orlando Sunday night on ABC. Let's kick it off. Enjoy the year, folks.